In this demo, I'm going to show you some key techniques in creating an effective group analysis in SIMS Assessment Manager. What is a group analysis? Well, it's one of these. It's a table that summarizes up data from your assessment system and does it by groups and subgroups within school, vulnerable groups as they're often called. So here we've got an analysis of some Year 6 data that is showing us what percentage of pupils and what number of pupils, in this case it's a count of pupils, are achieving our age-related expectations. We've got a column that indicates how many were below age-related expectations, how many are at age-related expectations, above age-related, and at and above age-related expectations, a cumulative column there. But what makes this a group analysis as such is the fact that we have a first line here which represents all the pupils in Year 6, but then within that we've got each of the groups of smaller groups of Year 6 pupils that we might want to analyse. So for example, we've got two registration groups, KH and VC there. But we've also got these vulnerable groups, EAL and non-EAL, free school meals, non-free school meals. We've got a group of poorest attenders in school there, pupil premium and non-pupil premium, SEN and non-SEN. So schools find these very, very useful. They find them very, very useful because the alternative to getting this information out of a mark sheet is to go into every single mark sheet and put various group filters on and do repeated grade analyses on those mark sheets multiple times, often 10 or 15 separate analyses to get the information that's within one of these grids and is instantaneously available. So I'll step you through a few key techniques to creating a grid like this. The first thing I'll step you through is the rows down the side here. Adding the rows down the side is relatively simple and straightforward. If you've ever created a group analysis before, you'll know you can click on rows here, and up it pops with this group chooser, which you'll be familiar with. It pops up in various parts of SIMS assessment, including on a mark sheet. And I'm sure you've used it before. But one thing you may have noticed when you're using the group chooser with a group analysis is that, for example, there is no pupil premium and non-pupil premium option on here. There's no SEN option for SEN status. There's an SEN, but that's for the actual need itself. For example, here, that's the actual need itself, not the status. So as a default, this list here of possible groups isn't the best. But what you can do is you can use SIMS Discover to give you access to EAL, non-EAL, SEN and non-SEN. So that's the first thing I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that now, is how we can create what are called SIMS Discover dynamic groups to give some more flexibility to the groups we can select down the side here. I've set mine already up, and you'll notice this has given me access to all these extra groups that I can add to my group analysis. So that's what I'm going to show you first. So I'm going to go into SIMS Discover. I won't have time to take you through all the ins and outs of SIMS Discover itself, so I'll assume that you know how to create graphs and how to display the graphs. I'm going to now show you how to create a dynamic group that we can then use further in those analysis grids. I'm going to choose the key pastoral factors graph here. And this graph is showing various key pastoral factors. I'm going to create a dynamic group because I want an indication on my group analysis of how pupils with medical conditions have fared in relation to their age-related expectations. So you'll notice here we have 41 pupils in the whole of our school who have some kind of a medical condition flagged up. I'm going to create a dynamic SIMS Discover group. The way I do that is by going to this icon here and clicking on Create New Discover Group, which creates an orange square there. and I can create my group by simply dragging these 41 pupils. That's a mouse drag, and dropping it over the orange square there. It creates a rule for membership of this group. And if I click on the Save button, it should come up with two options, Discover and Dynamic. It's also flashing away asking for a name for this group. Make sure you've chosen Dynamic and then give it a name. So mine's called Medical Conditions. And then I'll click Save, and it now creates that group. And in the background, it's applying this rule here. You can see that rule there is being applied to the whole SIMS database, and it's putting pupils into this group as a result of that. So 41 pupils should have now probably already gone into this group, and that group is now available to us to use in our group analysis, and also, by the way, in a mark sheet as well. Okay, so that's all the 41 pupils with a medical condition. Very, very often, teachers are asked to compare a group with all the pupils who aren't in that group. Special needs pupils, non-special needs pupils, pupil premium, non-pupil premium. So we're going to create a non-medical conditions group, and I'll show you how to create a non-medical conditions group now. I'm going to close this box down. We've done what we needed to do with that. Get rid of that box as well. And I'm going to display, I'm going to keep this graph on the screen, key pastoral factors on screen there. And I'm going to go over to pupil and show this one, which is a bit of an odd graph. It's student totals by whole school. And some people say, well, what's it here for? All it's doing is got one bar on it, and it's telling us we currently have 445 pupils in school. Well, it allows us to create a Venn diagram. If I take my 41 pupils who have a medical condition here, drag them over some white space, the white space of the canvas, and release the mouse. What now happens is it starts to create a Venn diagram, and I can now drag my 445 pupils in the entire school across onto this Venn diagram. And of course, what I now have are my 41 pupils with a medical condition and 404 pupils who are non-medical condition pupils, if you see what I mean. So now I can create my user-defined group. Sorry, not user-defined group, my Discover Dynamic group by dragging these 404 pupils on here, clicking Save, calling it non-medical conditions. Make sure it's dynamic again, click on Save. And now those 404 pupils are being written into this new dynamic group. So now I can come out of SIMS Discover, close it down, go back to rows, and if I look in Discover already, I should have, and here they are, a group for medical conditions and another one for non-medical conditions. I can click on Apply and then click on Populate Grid, and there it is, already populated with pupils. I have 5 pupils effectively in this group of Year 6 pupils. So that's how we can use SIMS dynamic groups to populate the rows here with some really useful groups of pupils. Okay, just looking around this particular grid, we've set this grid up so it's highlighting pupils below, at, above, and above age-related expectations. How have we done that? Let's just have a look at how we can set these things up. What appears as columns in a grid are set, perhaps not surprisingly, with this button here, the one that says columns on it. If you click on that, what it's actually listing here are what the system calls patterns. What is a pattern? A pattern is just a pre-configured list of column headings, basically, and the rules behind those column headings. The one that's highlighted here is the one we're actually using. We call the pattern Year 6 AREs, Year 6 Age-Related Expectations. And you can see in this section here how that has been set up. I'll just move it to one side so we can see the actual grid and the actual data. You can see we have an element label here called below. That corresponds with that text there. So that's how we set that text there. It's the element label there below. And the label value represents the grades that will be placed into that particular cell. So in other words, it will count pupils if their grades are in this range. If I click on Edit, you'll see that list of grades expanded here. So if the pupil being analysed has got any of these grades, he will be put into this column that's called Below. So we're looking for year 6 secure pupils. So therefore 6D and below are the ones that we want to put in this column. So I've put this column containing all the grades below 6S, year 6 secure, in our grade structure. Now you might have a slightly different grade structure, and I'm sure you will do in your school, but most schools who are recording age-related expectations have something along these lines, where they'll have a secure grade for the year group, and obviously below the secure grade, above the secure grade, and so on. So you just have to make sure you're picking up in this sort of catch-all column. This is a catch-all column. It's designed to catch every grade below a certain one. Just make sure that you've got every grade there, and you'll want to check your grade set very closely because you don't want to miss any grades from a column like this. If there's a grade missing and you don't list it here, that pupil won't be counted in that column, so your grid will give you an incorrect result. Just make sure you've got every possible grade here. So that's the first column. The second column is called at age-related expectation, and I've actually spelled it out there. So I sometimes find it helps to spell it out a little bit so that people know that we're talking about a 6S. So I've put that into the element label there, and you can see there it's a single one grade we're looking for there. We're looking at year 6 secure, and only year 6 secure. And for above, I've hedged my bets a little bit. Some schools are using 6M, some schools use 6G. So I put both into this one just to hedge my bets, so I don't have to remember which particular grade schools are using. You can actually put any grades at all in here, just has to make sense in terms of what you're trying to analyse. So there's 2 grades in that one, 6M and 6G. The final one here is more of a cumulative one, because again, thinking of the questions that teachers are often asked, they're often asked what percentage of your pupils are at or above age-related expectation normally, but it could be other things, but it's either at or above. And that's why we can put a column here that has 2 types of grades in. So there's my at grade, 6S, and there's my above grades, 6M or 6G. That's a cumulative column that is basically going to put pupils on twice. So a pupil may appear once there and also once there. And you'll see here that we've got, with the actual data, 52 pupils are at age-related expectations, 5 are above age-related expectations, which is where that 57 comes from just there. Okay, so that's an example of a pattern. Of course, there's lots of other examples of a pattern. You'll see how the pattern changes. If this is my year 5 expectations pattern, you can see how it's changed there basically. We've just got 5s in there. And if I open up the below for year 5s, the below grades for year 5s are 5D and below, whereas they were 6D and below in the previous example. If you're at secondary school, you've probably got something like this, where you pick up the individual 1 to 9 grades. If you're using subgrades, you'll probably have subgrades in there as well. I also have a pattern set up where I want to count the number of grades a pupil has progressed through. So it's the same idea. So as you develop your group analyses, you'll also develop a suite of patterns like this that you can mix and match and use in different contexts. So it's worthwhile doing it. Notice as well, the very first time that you create one of these grids, you can use a little wizard that Capita have put together. So if I wanted to create a brand new grid, I could click on new here. It's asking me do I want to save my changes. I'll say yes to that one. And this is a little wizard that pops up that's there to help you to put your very first group analyses together. And you'll see here that because we're on a group analysis, the first thing it's asking us to do is select our groups. And you'll have seen this screen a moment or two ago. So we can pick a year group, pick year 5. We can pick a registration group, the 2 year 5 registration groups, and we could also pick our discover groups. Non-pupil premium. Let's pick pupil premium first, then non-pupil premium, SEN, and non-SEN, and we could carry on. So that's the first bit of this wizard. If I click on next again, it says, okay, the columns, what pattern? Let's move on to the columns now, and it's asking us what type of aspects we're analysing. 99 times out of 100 we'll be analysing grade type aspects, but notice we can analyse any other types of aspect as well, but I'll stick with a grade aspect. And here is where there's a bit of a flaw in Capita's user interface, because here it's asking us for a pattern name, and that's absolutely fine if we already have a pattern set up, but notice if the pattern isn't here, there is no new button to create a new pattern with. So if the patterns you have aren't suitable, you just have to pick any old pattern and you can change it in the next step. So if you're doing this for the very first time and you can't find a pattern in this pattern chooser that suits, don't worry, just pick whatever's there and carry on with the wizard. I'll pick year 5 AREs there. If I click next, you can effectively ignore this screen. The group membership date range I'll mention right at the end of this webinar. It's only important about once a year, this one. So I'll ignore this one for now. And then we can choose our aspect and our result set. So this is maths again. So I'm going to choose #maths. It's progress. Sorry, it's not the progress, it's the grade. And the result set, of course, is whatever result set you have got the most recent data in. I'll choose year 5 spring term, and I'll click next. You can change the count type at any stage. You can leave it count for the moment and change it at runtime. So I usually just leave it as the default. And then it creates for us a little grid based on what we want to analyse. Now at this stage, notice it's saying maths grade. Notice it's only going to show year 5 spring terms. Be very aware that you may have some year 6 pupils who have got a maths grade for year 5 spring term. So always set the group filter down here. I always set the group filter to be the year group. So this is a year 5 grid. Let's make sure it only shows year 5 pupils. There we go. So at this stage, if I click on populate grid, it will show some results. I don't think I have any data, so it's not going to show any results for me today. But if you do have some year 5 results in these ranges, 5S, 5D, 5M, 5G, whatever, in these result sets, in that aspect, it will analyze them and put them in there. If you don't see any results, check the pattern that you're using and make sure the pattern that you're using is going to pick up the grades you're expecting. A tip I always give to people is, if there's any doubt about it, if for any reason you click on the populate grid button and nothing happens, go straight back to your mark sheet, your original mark sheet, and inspect the aspects and the result sets that you're using and make absolutely certain that there is data in there. The number of times I use either the wrong aspect or the wrong result sets, even though I think I know my system, time and time again I find I've made a mistake just there, and that referencing back to your original mark sheet works a treat. So I'm going to go back to my original year 6 analysis, and we've talked about setting up the rows and setting up the columns. When you are showing this to staff, point out to them that on the one hand, all this is nice and anonymous, so it's giving you top level data without showing any pupil names. But if you do want to get to pupil names quickly, you can double click on the numbers. When you double click on the numbers, it shows you the pupils that are within that cell. The other thing you can show is how quickly and easy it is to switch from showing a count of pupils to a percentage of results. And if you don't like the decimal places, you can click on the filter there, which rounds the filters down. The final thing I'll just show you is how easy it is to create a report based on the data in these grids. Now, these grids themselves, I don't recommend as a tool for individual classroom teachers. They are just a little bit too complicated to put together. There's just slightly too many ways in which they can go wrong. Really, they need to be done by a senior manager in school, or somebody on the data manager or SIMS manager or something like that. Somebody who understands about aspects and result sets and so on. You can make these easier to understand, incidentally, by making sure you choose useful and informative names for your aspects. There's the aspect names that I've chosen with this one. If you go down to result filter here, you'll see you could change to a different aspect. So if I no longer want to analyze the maths grade, I can analyze my reading grade. Well, I can do that nice and simply here because I've given all my aspects good, easy to remember, standardized names. But of course, if yours are named different things in a different format, abbreviated in a different way, your end users are going to find it quite difficult to navigate through them. So do what I've done here. Keep standard names. I've used this hashtag symbol to make sure that all the ones I use most commonly are up at the top of this list, because this list is a big, long list of thousands and thousands and thousands of aspects. Well, I've designed my system so that the aspects that are most commonly used are all prefixed by a hashtag and are all sensibly named, so that they come right at the very top of any analysis like this. Okay, so that's that. I was showing you a little tip about how to bring lots of these analyses together. Because, of course, after you've done maths, there's maths. Somebody will want you to print that out. And then somebody will want you to do reading, and somebody will want you to do writing, or they'll want you to do science at Key Stage 3, or French, or history, or whatever. And they'll probably want to see them side by side in one document. So what you can do is you can copy a document to the clipboard. So let's copy this grid to the clipboard now by clicking on that copy button there. And if I just fire up Excel, I can paste that into Excel, tidy it up if I want to in Excel. You can make these columns a bit wider, whatever you need to do. But I can then rerun the same analysis for a different subject. Imagine I've changed maths to reading and press populate, click on copy again, back into my original mark sheet and paste the reading one in there. And then do the same for writing, paste writing in there. Then you can just tidy this up a little bit. If you don't need the guff at the top, you can always delete that. And you've got a nice, consistent way of presenting your data. I'll sometimes, when I go into schools, I will make a play, and if the school have decided on some kind of different formula, it's not different formula, but different format to report this data in, I'll sometimes say, well, if you just accept the format as it comes out of SIMS, perhaps. Sometimes that can be just as good as any in-house style they've already developed. And if you're responsible for creating all these analyses, you'll save yourself a lot of time if you're not having to reformat your data to fit somebody else's original document. If you can just persuade the school that actually all the information that they need is within a grid formatted like this, again, you can save yourself a lot of time. So there you go. That's a group analysis. I like them a lot. I think they save a lot of time for schools and also often prevent the need for schools investing in third-party bits of software as well. So that often saves quite a bit of money in this day and age. So do use them with the schools, plug them a little bit. They are wonderfully useful. I hope you found this little demo useful. Thank you very much.